Chapter 11, The Icy Truth. Holly found herself standing in a merry hollow she didn't recognize. Gone were the gingerbread houses and candy cane lampposts. Instead, she saw a wild, untamed land where winter reigned supreme. Majestic ice formations rose like crystal cathedrals, and the air was alive with the dance of frost fairies and snow sprites. In the center of it all stood a figure that Holly recognized as a younger Glacia, her form more solid, her eyes alight with joy as she conducted the symphony of winter around her. But then, the scene shifted. Holly watched in horror as a group of figures emerged from the shadows, wielding magic that crackled with the warmth of eternal summer. She saw the battle unfold, witnessed the pain and betrayal in Glacia's eyes as she was forced into the magical prison. The founders of Merry Hollow celebrated their victory, but even in her dream, Holly could feel the wrongness of it all, the imbalance they had created. Just as the founders were sealing Glacia away, one of them turned to look directly at Holly. With a jolt, she recognized her own eyes staring back at her from a face centuries old. Holly woke with a gasp, her nightgown soaked with cold sweat. The dream clung to her like cobwebs, leaving her shaken and disoriented. As she struggled to calm her racing heart, she realized with growing dread that the dream hadn't felt like a mere nightmare. It had the weight of memory, of a truth long buried but finally clawing its way to the surface. A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Holly?" Jack's voice called, concern evident in his tone. "Are you all right?" I felt a surge of magic and... Holly threw on her robe and opened the door to find not just Jack, but Juniper and Pepper as well, all looking worried and slightly rumpled, as if they too had been awakened suddenly. "I had a dream," Holly began, then shook her head. "No, not a dream. A vision, I think. Of Merry Hollow's past. And I think we need to go back to the hidden chamber beneath the great Christmas tree." Juniper's eyes widened. "You felt it too?" "I was just coming to tell you about my own vision." Pepper nodded vigorously, her pointed ears quivering with excitement and nerves. "The Magical Council sent me an urgent message. They say the magical fluctuations in Merry Hollow are revealing long-hidden truths. We need to uncover them before they cause more instability." Jack looked from one to the other, his icy brow furrowed with concern. "Then we'd better get moving. If we're all having visions and feeling magical surges, something big is happening." As they made their way through the pre-dawn streets of Merry Hollow, Holly couldn't help but marvel at how different the town looked after their confrontation with Glacia. The eternal Christmas decorations were gone, replaced by the natural beauty of a true winter. Frost patterns adorned windows like delicate lace, and the snow crunched satisfyingly underfoot. They reached the great Christmas tree, now a majestic pine free of its gaudy decorations but no less breathtaking. Holly placed her hand on the rough bark, feeling the pulse of magic beneath. With a whispered word and a wave of her wand, the hidden entrance to the chamber below shimmered into view. As they descended into the darkness, the air grew thick with the weight of centuries-old magic. Holly conjured a ball of warm, golden light that illuminated the twisting passage. The walls were no longer smooth and polished as they had been during their first visit. Now, they could see ancient runes and symbols carved into the stone, pulsing with a faint, icy blue light. "It's like the chamber is waking up," Juniper murmured, her fingers tracing one of the glowing symbols. "Revealing its secrets now that the binding spell has been broken." They reached the central chamber, and Holly gasped. The room had transformed entirely. Gone was the sterile, vault-like space they had first encountered. In its place was a vast cavern that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. The walls were covered in intricate murals that shifted and moved, depicting scenes from Merry Hollow's history. "It's beautiful," Pepper breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Jack nodded, but his expression was guarded. "Beautiful, yes. But also dangerous, I think. Can you feel it? The magic here is raw. Uncontrolled." Holly could indeed feel it. The air thrummed with power, making her skin tingle and her witch's senses go into overdrive. She approached one of the moving murals, drawn to a scene that seemed to match her dream. As she touched the wall, the world around her blurred. And suddenly, Holly found herself transported into the memory itself. She was no longer a mere observer but a participant in the scene unfolding before her. The air was crisp with the bite of winter, but there was a warmth to it as well, a sense of balance and harmony. Holly saw Glacia as she had been centuries ago, resplendent in her full power. The winter spirit danced through the pristine forests, her laughter like the tinkling of icicles in the wind. Where she passed, frost flowers bloomed and snowflakes swirled in intricate patterns. But then, the scene shifted. A group of figures emerged from the shadows, their faces set with grim determination. Holly recognized them as the founders of Merry Hollow, and with a jolt, she realized that one of them bore a striking resemblance to her own grandmother. "It must be done," one of the founders said, his voice heavy with regret. "For the good of all, we must create a haven of eternal Christmas cheer." Holly wanted to cry out, to warn Glacia of the impending betrayal, but she was powerless to intervene. She watched in horror as the founders began their ritual, their magic burning with the warmth of summer as they sought to bind winter itself. The battle was fierce and terrible. Glacia fought with all her might, but she was outnumbered. Slowly, inexorably, she was forced into the magical prison that would become the heart of Merry Hollow's eternal Christmas. As the vision faded and Holly found herself back in the hidden chamber, she stumbled, overwhelmed by the emotions she had experienced. Jack caught her, his cool touch grounding her in the present. "Holly? What did you see?" he asked, concern evident in his icy blue eyes. Before she could answer, Juniper gasped. She was standing before another section of the wall, her hand outstretched. "You need to see this," she said, her voice trembling. They gathered around, and Holly felt her heart sink as she read the words etched into the stone. "When winter's chains at last are broken, and Christmas spirit falters, shaken, the balance must be swift restored, or magic's price will be ignored. A choice must then be made with care, by one whose blood the founders share. To mend the rift, 'tween cold and warm, or watch as chaos takes its form." "A prophecy," Pepper whispered, her eyes wide. "But what does it mean?" Holly felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. I think it's talking about me," she said softly. "In my vision, I saw one of the founders. She looked just like my grandmother." Jack squeezed her hand reassuringly. "We don't know that for sure, Holly. It could be referring to anyone with founder's blood." But Holly shook her head. "No, it fits too well. The choice we made to free Glacia, to restore the balance of seasons, to Merry Hollow, but what if that was just the beginning? What if there's more we need to do?" Juniper was examining another section of the wall, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Look at this," she called. "It's a record of the original binding spell. It's incredibly complex. The founders didn't just imprison Glacia, they rewrote the very magical fabric of this entire region." As they pored over the ancient records, a troubling picture began to emerge. The founders' actions, while well-intentioned, had caused ripples of magical instability that extended far beyond Merry Hollow. The eternal Christmas they had created was maintained at a terrible cost, drawing power from the natural world and disrupting the balance of magic across a vast area. "We thought freeing Glacia and restoring the seasons would solve everything," Holly said, her voice heavy with realization. "But it's only the first step. We've opened a Pandora's box of magical consequences." Jack nodded grimly. "The question is, what do we do now? How do we restore the balance without causing even more damage?" As they debated their next steps, Holly felt the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. If the prophecy was indeed about her, then the fate of not just Merry Hollow, but perhaps the entire magical world, rested in her hands. They spent hours in the chamber, uncovering more secrets and debating the ethics of their town's foundation. The sun had risen and set again by the time they finally emerged, their minds